Okay, here we go. We're going to go into part two of our critiques for the process speeches. This goes to Tink. You were talking about setting up a banquet room. The first thing I would ask you is analyze your audience. How many people in your audience are ever going to want to know the information that you have? Even if there are some, then target your speech to them and be sure to label it that way. That you talked about different occasions, but the real purpose is how many people in your audience are ever going to be the ones to have to set up the room. If you have a wedding reception or something like that, generally part of the hall is that they set up the room. All right, you have the wrong shot composition. See this shot? This is the only shot I want to see. Keep that in mind. When you don't do it, it's going to cost you points-wise on your speeches. When your audience introduces itself and the last person leaves, you don't want to be doing something like this. All right, hello, I want to talk to you today about. No, come into the camera shot, pause for a second, compose yourself, maybe look down and see what you're going to say, look up and start. Do not ever start your speech looking down, and don't ever start your speech until you've actually arrived, stopped for a moment or two, and then start your speech. Don't be speaking while you're moving into the camera shot. What else? What's your credibility for this speech? I don't understand what it is that you are doing or why the actual speech itself is being done. I just don't get it. I don't understand why you are giving this speech. So make sure that you establish your credibility. You have no sources for any of the information you gave in your speech. You may be the world's greatest expert on setting up banquet halls. I rather doubt it, but if you didn't establish your credibility and you haven't given any sources, then I can only wonder. All right, don't elongate words. Don't say chairs and tablecloths, whatever. You didn't say it exactly that way, but don't elongate them. You only had one outline, and make sure that you take care of that. Overall, the speech was not that bad in spots, but you want to work on that. All right, next up is Jazzy, and you talked about hearing loss, and I could give you a real long, involved critique here, but let me just give you a couple of things. Very nice beginning, a very, very well done citation of sources. You are very conversational in your tone, and now let me give you the real good news, if that was bad news. This speech was about as good as it gets. It was a spectacular, outstanding in every way. You nailed this speech. It was a great and a compelling story, well told and very conversational. And one of the things you need to know is I don't give perfect scores, but congratulations. This was very well deserved. Jazzy, hearing loss, sign language, very, very well done. All right, next up is Mac, and Mac talked about what? You talked about brake pads. All right. Watch the sniffles, that kind of thing when you're doing it. Tighten up the camera shot. It was just, your speech was just a tad short, and I mean a tad short. You want to fix that. Make sure you kind of practice your speech. When you actually give the speech, you're going to run a little long or a little short, so kind of work on that a little bit. You had excellent use of visuals. This is a very well done, nice job. But when you get to the actual procedure, you lost me. There is no way under God's green earth that I would ever try to replace my brakes or my brake pads, no matter how simple you made it sound. I'm just not going to do that again. Analyze your audience, know what your audience is, and be willing at some point to say, for some of you, it's going to be easier for you to go to the Goodyear store or the local mechanic and let them do it, and just kind of treat it like that. But for those of you that are adventuresome and consider yourselves a little handy, this speech is for you. And talk to them that way. All right. Nice job, Mac, overall, though. Next up is Taffy. You talked about cookies. Remember I told you there are a lot of cooking kinds of things. And actually, processed speeches lend themselves to that. You have the wrong camera shot at the start. You did a very good explanation. You were conversational and informative. You were kind of covered up a little bit when you had the mixer on. This was an overall good job. And when you give a process speech, you don't have to do all of everything. Remember, a cup of this, a teaspoon of that, a half a cup of this, and they just dump it. So think in terms of that. It was an excellent ending, but I can't taste the finished product, so that's not good. You got to be able to figure out how to hand that through the picture to get me a taste of what it's like. Next up is Pandora. You talked about special dessert. What you need to do is square up your shot. You have too much room to your left and too much headroom. Wrong shot composition. You have a very good conversational style. You're moving your eyes presumably from audience member to audience member, but you're doing it so fast that it's of little value when you're talking to an audience member. If you're going to talk to an audience member, you talk like this for a while, and then you come over here for a while, and you come over here for a while. But what I prefer you to do and want you to do is talk to me in the camera, and I will make sure that I assume the audience is there and listening. All right, it was distracting when you're doing this and this and this and this and this and this and this, so kind of keep that in mind. This was a good story. It was a good finish. You only gave me one outline, and you showed the finished product at the end. Way to go. All right. Next up is speed. And speed, you talked about changing oil. Please note what I said to the other person about changing brake pads. That's pretty much the same kind of thing going on there. Your video is bouncing. I have no idea why it's bouncing unless it's on a platform and somebody is moving on the platform causing the camera to bounce because you made it a point to say you had a tripod. Show things longer. You apparently are reading your speech kind of off the camera a little bit. Use a speech outline when you do that. Look at the camera when you're speaking. One other thing that is kind of interesting is that you talked about OL, and what we're really talking about is oil. They did a thing one time on Candid Camera where they had people talk about oil and all, and it's a minor point, but you need to work on that a little bit. Okay, what else? Know your audience. Speak to those who are on your side, and kind of think in terms of that way. Also, finally, recycle the oil helps the environment. You said, finally, recycle oil helps the environment. Recycle, not recycled, etc., etc. All right, that is speed. All right, we're going to pause here, and we'll come back after this.